because we're working with both relative and absolute here. So that's a very relative level. Yeah. So if somebody comes into my office, this year's flu was really bad. So people were coming in and they were like, everywhere. I was definitely taking some antivirals. And then I would say the mantra for sure. But I don't get sick very easily. Yeah. But, if you're working on that relative level, and I had one day where I think I saw 4 people with the flu in a row. And I was wiping down all the table with the antibacterial wipes and the doorknobs and everything.
I just had never had that happen before. I was like, oh, I have a wart.
Yeah, it happens. Yeah, it can happen. So if you're dealing with something, communicable, is that what they call it? Yes. Yeah. Then I would take care. But
let's be more practical.
Yeah, it's good to be practical. Yeah. Yeah, we are working in the relative mostly. Yeah.
You said today is a Medicine Buddha Day.
Uh-huh.
Can you say more about is that once a month, or how does that all get figured
Yeah,
out?
it's once a month. So you can download this very nice fancy app for free called there's one called the Tibetan Calendar, but they need to update it so that can you see that where it says Medicine Buddha Day?
What's the name?
So it's called the Druk, D-R-U-K calendar. And so it will tell you when there's Dakini Day and Protector Day, and so it will tell you, but it's the 8th lunar day of the month that is Medicine Buddha Day. So every 8th lunar day is a Medicine Buddha Day. So the Medicine Buddha practice that you do on Medicine Buddha Day is amplified, times a lot. So it's a really good thing to do, Medicine Buddha practice on a Medicine Buddha Day, which is why I was psyched to hit on a Sunday. I was like, yes. So that made me really happy. And also we consider Thursdays to be related to Medicine Buddha. But for some people, their personal astrology, Thursdays are not that great of a day. So it's not going to harm to do Medicine Buddha practice. But sometimes if you want to receive a particular treatment, for example, a Medicine Buddha Day is a really good day to do it, as long as it doesn't conflict with your own personal astrology. So it's a good day to get surgery. Again, if it doesn't conflict with your astrology, and then also we have something that's known as the law. So this is, some people translate this as soul. Have you heard of this soul retrieval kind of thing? I hate this translation. It's terrible. So it's not actually your soul, right? We don't have this concept of soul in Tibetan Buddhism. It's more your consciousness. This is something that goes with you from lifetime to lifetime. So I can get where they get the whole soul world, but I kind of think this kind of has a more puritanical meaning that we associate with it. So I prefer the word consciousness. And so the law will actually travel in your body with the lunar cycle from the big toe up to the top of the head on the full moon, which is why sometimes people on full moons, they're like, I can't sleep. It's because their consciousness is on the top of their head, and it's kind of whoa, 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 whoa. So it's a really good time to do practice because your consciousness is right there, and if you've got deities that have been given to you and they're sitting on top of your head, they give you the vase and they bonk you on the top of the head with it, then, it's kind of like this, So I just imagine that Medicine Buddha is always right here, right? Constantly. And so if your consciousness is on the top of your head during the full moon, then doing practice is a little bit more enhanced. But this particular law will travel, so if it's in your knee and you need to have knee surgery, you want to do the astrology to make sure that you're not going for surgery on a day when it's in that location in your body, because that could be disturbing to your consciousness. So people sometimes will have the best surgeon, the surgery will go well, everything seems fine, but it doesn't work. Sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's that it was the wrong day, or it was on their personal wrong astrology day. So we will look at astrology in that way too. But the Medicine Buddha days are always the 8th lunar day. So, but that app is really helpful. So then it tells you like Protector Day, so you can do all your protector practices on that day, or Dakini Day, or, you know, so it's a cool little app. All the monks use it. They're the ones that told me about it.
Nishala, as you said, the Tibetan one seems to have been unmaintained.
They haven't,
Which
yeah.
app are you talking about then?
It's called the Druk, D-R-U-K
Okay,
calendar.
okay.
And that one works with the latest, well, I don't know, I haven't done the latest updates. I try not to update my phone because it slows it down, but, yeah,
Great, thanks.
yeah.
There's an email, the Karma Kagyu calendar.
Yes, you can also check online. Or you can, the Rigpa calendar is like the hardback version. Trungpa Rinpoche also makes a calendar every year. So there's different ways you can get it in this modern technical age. Yes. Yes.
This is a rather simple question, but the hum that you just had us correct the spelling on,
Uh-huh.
there's another one on page 8, and it just looks like there's a slight style difference. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
You mean in the shape of the letters?
Well, just like yeah, because there's like a little tiny dot just to the left.
Yeah, the dot, that's called a sectum. And when you look at the Tibetan script, you'll see dots, and that indicates, well, actually Tibetan's very infuriating because you can have a prefix or a suffix, and it can change the meaning of the word entirely. And those little dots kind of tell us where the words begin and end, even though it doesn't look like, yeah, it's kind of nebulous actually. But that's called a sectun, and that doesn't need to be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's probably just they were typing in Tibetan and they hit the space bar. So, yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
But is hum a different seed syllable or a different translation of that seed syllable?
Hum?
Hum.
Oh, hum is different. Hum is different. That was just a typo.
I thought hum was Sanskrit and hum was the Tibetan pronunciation.
Yeah, but mostly we use the Tibetan, the hum.
I know, but you're saying they actually have two different meanings?
I think they have two different meanings. That would be a question for the Kempos. But I think that the way I was taught it, you do hum.
Well, that's the Tibetan one.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess if you're doing Sanskrit, maybe. But I would ask Kempos if we want the true and genuine answer. But I consider that a typo, and when I've taught with Kempo Lobsang, he also has corrected that as well. So I don't know. Yeah. Because isn't hum, does it have the ah? I don't think it does. I think hum is just, doesn't have the shepshu.
I'm not sure.
I think hum doesn't have the shepshu because the little round thing with that makes the hum, but the shepshu gives it the
Okay.
That's what I think, but I'm not entirely certain. Sanskrit, me and Sanskrit are not friends. Yeah. I'll ask. I'll ask. Yes.
I had a insight, and I wanted to check in with you. So I work in a very mainstream Western setting. And what I notice both and when I'm working and when my colleagues are working, that when the magic, and when I'm in rehab, where people are, like people maybe haven't been conscious, maybe haven't walked, when the magic happens for somebody turning a corner, seems to me to very often be when somebody sees them as themselves. And does that relate to the distal cause, that when you're seen as yourself, then you see yourself as yourself and a little bit of that ignorance dissolves? Or am I just making that story up to fit my world?
could buy that. I could agree with that, because what's happening with the distal cause and the ignorance, the basic ignorance that creates the 3 root poisons, is it's kind of creating it in a very solid physical way. It's merging with the 5 elements, the 3 root poisons, and then we have what we call the 3 faults, or the 3 primary energies of the body. So I think if we're really solidified in that as a reality, then we're limited. And then if we go back to that distal cause of ignorance and we clarify it as wisdom, right? We purify it and we're working on the wisdom aspect, then I could see that as moving things physically out of the way. Yeah, because then you're more into your basic nature, your Buddha nature. And I think often in very serious illnesses, we get really wrapped up in being the illness instead of taking the illness on the path as a teacher. And so when we can eliminate the idea that we are the illness and that the illness is just something that's, it's not saying that it's a concept, because we're experiencing it on a very real and genuine level, but when we get wrapped up in the illness being all that we are, then that's where we get limited. And so people who, you see all these amazing things like you're saying, not walking again, like where they're starting to get people with full spinal cord, severing are starting to be able to walk again. And that was previously thought not possible. And a lot of those people, it was because they didn't accept reality. They didn't accept that relative truth. That, oh, well, you'll never walk again. And they were like, well, I will. And they do. So I could buy into that. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Illness, we all have to face illness on a very relative level, right? At some point, birth, old age, sickness, and death, we're all going to experience it. And I was just with Trungpa Rinpoche, and he's older, and he's doing very well, actually. His health is very good. But, when he was giving his teachings, he said, I'm like a child again, because I can't see so well, and I can't hear so well, and, you have to kind of really shout when you're talking to him, and all of that's true, but at the same time, one of the Khenpos was giving some side teachings in the afternoons of Rinpoche's teachings, and I really agreed with what he said. He said, Rinpoche is just getting more and more precious. As he ages, he's coming to be like a fine jewel, like a diamond, that has been sort of sitting there and waiting. And so I feel that, we all know that he's elderly and we're all praying for his long life. And I've personally requested that he live for 100 years. To him many times, actually. And, so we all have that genuine, I think, we say that the more the students practice well, the longer the teacher's life will be. Because of the samaya. It actually helps them when we do very good practice. So that's really important. But on a really relative level, he's aware that he's aging on the physical form, but yet the stainless nature of his mind is just getting clearer and more refined and more brilliant and more radiant and more just to be in his presence is sometimes just so wonderful. So I think we find ourselves very limited by the human form in ways that we don't necessarily need to be.
So maybe that's a doorknob question to talk more about this attachment to form, because you brought up the idea that that also allows for the three poisons, which leads into the experience of skandhas and false consciousness, and so that would be fun to tease out sometime with more detail, as I
Yeah.
hadn't quite seen them linked that way before.
Yeah, you know, the best practice that sort of alludes to that is the Heart Sutra, actually, which I have actually requested that the Kempos teach here at some point.
Oh, good.
Yeah, because I haven't heard it in a few years, and I've been reading it, and I want to go back to it. But yes, it is, that's a big question. And, you know, our attachment to form leads to our suffering, right? So an enlightened being can have somebody be really terrible to them, and they have no attachment to how that feels. And likewise, they can have someone be very loving to them, and they also have no attachment to how that feels, because it's all one taste, right? That's a very Dzogchen view, but it's, you know, they don't have this